I saw this kid, and I thought, let me go stand next to this kid. He looks interesting. So I went up and I said, hey, how you doing? I'm Andre. And he said, I'm Prince. I said, Prince? He said, yeah. I said,
I saw him in a discotheque one night, and I grabbed him by his shirt and I said, better come on, get this hit.
Was Prince really the love of Andre Cymone's life? It's the rumor that's followed them for over 40 years.
And I realized Prince didn't tell anybody anything about me or my,
Andre Cymone wasn't just Prince's bassist, he was his roommate, his childhood shadow, his first witness. And if the rumors are true, he may have been Prince's first heartbreak.
Prince didn't tell anybody anything about me or my, Like, I didn't get any credit on his first album. I don't think I got any credit on any of his records.
For decades, the whispers grew louder, especially after Prince's death. The stories didn't match, the timelines got blurry, and neither man ever confirmed until now. So what really happened between Andre Cymone and Prince behind closed doors? Before the world called him Prince, before the eyeliner, the lace, the guitars shaped like hieroglyphs, he was just a quiet, awkward teen from Minneapolis. And standing right beside him, just as unknown, just as hungry, was Andre Cymone Anderson, long before he became Andre Cymone. These weren't just two neighborhood kids, they were two escapees. Prince ran from the chaos in his home. Andre left behind his own fractured household. And where did they end up? Not just in the same band, but in the same bedroom. Inside the home of Prince's father, the two teenagers became each other's shelter. It wasn't about fame yet. There were no record deals, no screaming fans. Just two boys, barely 16, sleeping feet apart, building a new kind of sound on secondhand instruments, and building a new kind of bond, one that didn't have a name back then, not one the world would have accepted. Andre later said they had nothing, no resources, no backup plan, just each other. And for a while, that was enough. Together, they formed bands, Grand Central first, then Champaign. They played school dances, community centers, anywhere they could plug in a bass and a busted mic. But music wasn't just a hobby, it was the only way out. And they weren't just collaborating, they were evolving. Watching each other, pushing each other. Prince, even then, was obsessive. If Andre mastered a bass line, Prince would stay up all night trying to top it. If Prince started writing lyrics, Andre would try to reshape the melody. It wasn't competition, it was compulsion. One couldn't move unless the other did first. But outside that room, things weren't so simple. This was the late 1970s. In black communities, especially among young men, affection was rigid. Intimacy had rules. You could say, that's my brother, but you couldn't say, that's the person who makes me feel safe, not without raising eyebrows. So they never said it. Whatever was going on between Prince and Andre, it stayed unspoken. No one was publicly out. The music world was even harsher. And in Minneapolis, two young black boys sleeping in the same room, creating art late into the night, whispering dreams into the dark. That was bound to start rumors. They didn't care, at least not at first. Prince was starting to get noticed. Industry people were flying into town. Andre was right there beside him, anchoring his sound, keeping him grounded. But the more attention Prince got, the more things started to shift. See, Andre was never just a background bassist. He was instrumental, literally. Many of the ideas that became central to the Minneapolis sound weren't created in isolation. They came from the push and pull between two minds locked in the same creative space. But when the record deals came, only one name was on the cover. And even in those earliest studio sessions, there were cracks. Stories of Prince brushing off Andre's input, of taking ideas and reshaping them, rebranding them as his own. At first, Andre laughed it off. They were brothers, right? But as Prince's fame grew, the laughter stopped. Respect turned into resentment. That bond they'd built in a tiny bedroom started to bend under the weight of ego and industry. But in those early days, they were inseparable, not just creatively, but emotionally. Prince wasn't close with many people. He didn't let people in easily. But with Andre, he let him all the way in. They joked like brothers. They argued like lovers. They moved through the world like they didn't need anyone else. And maybe, for a while, they didn't. But something unspoken always hovered in the background. The intimacy, the isolation, the absence of other relationships during that time, the sheer intensity of how much they needed each other. That's where the whispers started. Not because they said anything, but because they didn't. Years later, fans would analyze old photos. Look at the body language. Reread early lyrics. They'd point to the shared apartment, the secrecy, the sudden fallout. But in this first chapter of their lives, none of that mattered yet. All that existed was the music, the dream, and the closeness. By the late 70s, something strange was happening in Minneapolis, a city not known for funk, not known for black music innovation. But inside a basement studio, Prince and Andre Cymone were forging a new kind of sound. One that wasn't quite soul, not exactly rock, not disco, not punk, not R&B. It was all of it. Synths, slap bass, drum machines, and raw. The Minneapolis sound was being born, but while the world would eventually call it Prince's movement, behind the curtain there were two minds shaping it, not one. Prince was the frontman, but Andre? He was the architect in the shadows.
His first album, I was right there. Second album, I was right there. We lived together. The third album, I engineered probably a good bit of it, the Dirty Mind album. He didn't want people to think somehow I was, the brains behind his whole thing.
In rehearsal rooms and half-built studios, Andre helped build the skeletons of songs Prince would later claim alone. He was the bassist, yes, but he was also an arranger, a conceptualist. He gave Prince someone to push against, someone to impress, someone who understood the strange math behind the funk. And at the heart of it was their closeness, not just musical, personal. They still lived together, ate together, slept a few feet apart. The lines between work and life had long since disappeared. But outside that room, the world was beginning to watch. As Prince's solo career launched, the aesthetic got bolder, the heels got higher, the eyeliner got sharper. He wore lace on television, silk robes in interviews. He stripped down in his album covers and blurred every line he could find. Gender, identity, the industry didn't know what to do with it. This wasn't macho R&B. This wasn't Teddy Pendergrass. This wasn't Rick James. Although the comparisons were constant, Prince wasn't trying to be sexy for women. He was trying to be something else entirely. Fluid, mysterious, uncontainable. And Andre? He didn't flinch. He was right there beside him, performing in matching outfits, dipping into androgynous fashion himself. In early solo performances and videos, Andre sported makeup, leather jumpsuits, and crop tops that echoed Prince's own aesthetic. He wasn't just co-signing it, he was part of it. But still, the world only saw one star. The press began to label Prince as the eccentric genius, the future of music. His record label leaned into the mystique, crafting an image so impenetrable, so and yet that nobody knew what to believe. Was he gay? Was it a gimmick? Was he celibate? Was it all part of the show? No one asked Andre those questions. He wasn't the one giving interviews. He didn't have the stage, but the whispers. They started to multiply. Two young men, one bedroom, a sudden rise, no visible girlfriends, no public relationships, just the music and each other.
First of all, Prince and I go way back we started off together, literally. Our first bands. I got the guy's first guitar. A lot of people don't know that. So there's a lot of, real history as far as that's concerned.
In hindsight, it's easy to speculate. But back then, the industry didn't want answers. It wanted mystery. And Prince knew that. He fed the mystery. He blurred the truth so well that no one could find it. Andre, on the other hand, stayed silent. That silence created a vacuum, and the fans filled it. online forums, blogs, backstage gossip. Everyone had a theory. Some claimed the bond was platonic. Others believed they were secret lovers. Some suggested unrequited love, Andre for Prince, or maybe the other way around. No evidence ever surfaced. No photos, no letters, nothing concrete. But the secrecy itself became the evidence, and then came the tension. As Prince's fame grew, he started to take tighter control over everything. Lyrics, visuals, credits. Andre's contributions started to disappear from the liner notes. His name was there, until it wasn't. Andre had helped create the skeleton of a kingdom, but now he was being written out of its history. The silence turned bitter. The studio sessions turned cold. In interviews years later, Andre would allude to the pain, not just of being undercredited, but of being erased.
What we would do is we would jam on different ideas, and those ideas would turn into songs.
And yet, the world kept calling it Prince's sound. That erasure hit differently because it wasn't just professional, it was personal. This wasn't a coworker taking credit. This was someone who'd seen you cry in the dark. Someone you trusted with everything. Someone you once called family, or maybe something even deeper than family. The Minneapolis sound blew up. I Wanna Be Your Lover hit the charts. Warner Brothers started pumping money into Prince's vision. The revolution had begun. But for Andre Cymone, the revolution came with a cost. The closer Prince got to superstardom, the further Andre drifted away. And deep down, the question grew louder. Was this just about business? Or was something broken between them that couldn't be fixed? Because from the outside, the rift looked sudden. But from the inside, the silence had been building for years. By 1981, it was no longer just whispers in rehearsal rooms or subtle glances in interviews. The tension between Prince and Andre Cymone had finally broken through the surface, and it did so at the worst possible time, right when Prince was on the verge of becoming a global phenomenon. The official story was simple: creative differences. Andre left the band. Prince moved forward. No big deal, but anyone who had been watching, really watching, knew it wasn't that clean. Because this wasn't just about music. This was personal. Let's start with that track. Do Me, Baby. It's one of Prince's most iconic early ballads. Released on the Controversy album in 1981, the very same year Andre left. For decades, the song was solely credited to Prince. But Andre Cymone had a different story. He said he wrote it, all of it. Lyrics, structure, the entire emotional skeleton. And when Prince put it on his album with no credit, that was the final slap. Andre said nothing publicly at the time. He didn't go on the radio. He didn't blast Prince in interviews. But the people around them knew. And they understood that the fallout wasn't just about royalties. It was about betrayal. Because when someone steals your music, they steal your legacy. But when it's someone you once shared a room with, someone who might have held your trust in a way no one else ever did, it cuts deeper. That's why Andre walked away. Not just from the band, from Prince. Fans didn't understand it at first. They thought Andre was crazy. Why would you leave Prince now when the rocket is taking off? But the truth was, the rocket already left, and Andre wasn't on it. Instead, he struck out solo, signed his own deal, released his debut album Livin' in the New Wave in 1982. The sound was sharp, futuristic, fashion-forward. Andre leaned even harder into androgyny, cropped hair, makeup, synth-heavy production. He wasn't running from what Prince had done. He was trying to outdo it. But no matter what he did, the comparisons followed him like a shadow. And Prince? He never mentioned Andre again. Not in interviews, not on stage. It was like he'd been erased. Fans caught on. They began asking questions on forums years later. Why did they fall out? Why wouldn't Prince acknowledge him? Was it just music politics? Or was it heartbreak? People close to them had theories. Some said Andre resented the fame Prince was getting for sounds they'd built together. Others said Prince couldn't handle competition, especially not from someone who knew him intimately. But the one theory that never went away, that maybe it wasn't competition or credits at all. Maybe it was love, or at least something close enough to love to make betrayal feel unbearable. If one of them caught feelings and the other didn't, or worse, if both of them did and couldn't say it, how do you survive that when the world's watching? Because it wasn't just about rumors anymore. It was about silence. Neither of them said a word for decades. Not one interview, not one reconciliation, not even a photo together after 1981.
And we were very adamant about creating our own identities.
And as Prince became a legend, Andre became a ghost. But even after all that time, the clues didn't stop. In the mid-2000s teens, something changed. Do Me Baby was re-uploaded to streaming platforms. And this time, it didn't just list Prince. Andre Cymone was officially added as co-writer. No press release, no announcement, just a quiet correction. Too late to be meaningful? Maybe. But to fans who knew the history, it felt like an apology without words, like a confession. And maybe that's what their entire relationship had been. Unspoken truths buried under decades of genius and ego. Because even after the fallout, Prince never replaced Andre. Not really. He filled the bassist slot. He surrounded himself with talent. But no one had the same place in his story. No one ever did. And when Prince died in 2016, there was one person who didn't do interviews, who didn't cash in, who didn't write a tell-all book: Andre Cymone. He stayed silent. Prince never explained himself. He didn't give interviews that clarified anything. But his music, that was a different story. From the jump, he made ambiguity his brand. In the chorus of 1981's Controversy, he sings it plainly. Am I black or white? Am I straight or gay? He didn't answer the question. He just let it hang. That was the point. Prince was never interested in being legible to the public. He wore heels, lace, eyeliner. His album covers oozed gender-blurring, and when people asked about it, he dodged, always. But the lyrics spoke louder. Songs like If I Was Your Girlfriend flipped the script completely. He imagined himself as his partner's female best friend, the one who gets the vulnerability, the emotional closeness, the trust. It wasn't just fantasy, it was a challenge. He was asking, what if love had nothing to do with gender at all? Fans noticed, and the speculation intensified. Especially because Andre Cymone, Prince's early roommate, bandmate, and closest creative partner, was standing right next to him during those years. They dressed similarly, played with similar sounds. Andre's 1982 solo debut had its own androgynous aesthetic. Makeup, tight clothes, new wave synths. It wasn't imitation, it was reflection. They were from the same house, the same room, but neither man ever labeled anything. Because they couldn't. In the 1980s, black male artists were boxed into hyper-masculine roles. You had to be yes, but always hetero. Always dominant. Anything else? Career. So Prince let the music say what he couldn't. And Andre? He stayed quiet. They never confirmed a thing. But the coded lyrics, the wardrobe, the public silence, it all left space. Space for fans to read between the lines. Space for rumors. Space for something real that couldn't be said. And in that silence, a different kind of truth emerged. In the early 80s, the music industry didn't just reward talent, it enforced image, especially for black men. You had to be tough, cool, desirable to women. There was no room for softness, no space for fluidity, and absolutely no tolerance for queerness, real or perceived. Prince found a way to dance around it. His genius protected him. He wore heels and lace, sang about ambiguous and still topped the charts. But even he knew the risk. That's why he never labeled himself, never confirmed anything. He just kept the mystery alive and moved through it. Andre Cymone didn't have that kind of fame to shield him. When he stepped into solo stardom, his image leaned just as bold: makeup, gender-bending visuals, synthetic funk. But the industry didn't embrace him like they did Prince. Without massive success, there was no safety net. The truth is, if Prince or Andre had come out, assuming there was anything to come out about, it would have ended everything. Back then, there were no public gay black male pop stars. Not one. The system was built to crush that kind of truth. So the silence wasn't just personal. It was structural. Survival. Even their own communities weren't safe. In black culture, hypermasculinity wasn't just encouraged. It was expected. Anything outside that was mocked, erased, or punished. That's what makes their unspoken bond so powerful. Because whether or not there was romance, there was definitely repression. The industry forced them to hide, to bury their feelings, their aesthetic instincts, their possible truths. And for two men who built a sound that changed the world, that silence might have been the heaviest thing they ever carried. When Andre Cymone walked away in 1981, Prince didn't look back. He didn't stop. He accelerated. Just a year later, 1999 dropped. Then, Purple Rain. Then, superstardom. Prince became a global icon, selling out arenas, redefining pop music, changing fashion, rewriting the rules. And Andre? He disappeared from the frame. He released his solo albums, Livin' in the New Wave, Survivin' in the 80s, AC. But none came close to the tidal wave Prince was riding. Even when the sound was sharp and the visuals bold, the spotlight never landed the same way. Fans barely noticed the absence, but the irony was cruel. Andre had helped build the sound. He had been in the room when the magic began. Yet now, he was an afterthought, a ghost in the margins of a legacy he helped ignite. And Prince never publicly acknowledged him. No shout-outs, no tributes, not even a casual mention. It was like Andre had been erased from the narrative. Some say Prince was just moving forward. Others believe it ran deeper: guilt, anger, heartbreak, maybe all three. Whatever the reason, the silence was deliberate. Andre didn't retaliate. He didn't tell all. He kept his head down, made music, and lived his life. But he watched the rise, from a distance. And no matter how bright Prince's light became, there was always a shadow following it. One shaped like the kid who once slept a few feet away. The one who knew the early version of him better than anyone. The one who was there before the legend and vanished once the crown fit. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.